So with that, let me request Ambassador George Moose, who's the Vice Chair of the Board of Governors at USIP, former career Ambassador of the United States, and former Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. If you could please introduce our speaker. Thanks, George.
Oh, thank you, Moeed. It's my distinct honor to introduce to you somebody who I'm sure needs no introduction in this audience. Senator Mohammed Dar, the Honorable Minister of Finance of the government of Pakistan. He, as you all know, is a leading international economic and financial expert. But more than that, he is recognized as a leader not only in his own country, but internationally. His experience and expertise in the world of finance and economics are matched by an abiding interest in, commitment to humanitarianism, democracy, and the rule of law. He is a distinguished graduate of two of Pakistan's most prestigious universities, Government College, which is now Government College University, and the University of Punjab in Lahore. I believe most of you have had a chance to look at the minister's biography and resume, and I think we will all agree that it is indeed impressive. As I read through it, it seemed to me that there were three major themes or threads that run through it consistently. The first is his extensive experience and involvement in the private sector, which, as we all know, is the ultimate driver of economic growth and economic change and development. That experience actually began in the United Kingdom, but continued when he returned to Pakistan in the mid-1970s. And I think it's what informs much of his thinking as he is occupying this important, vitally important role as Minister of Finance. The second thread is that clearly of national and public service, something he has pursued both nationally and internationally. I noted that in 1976, for example, he accepted an offer from the government of Libya and joined as a senior auditor in the Auditor General Department in Tripoli. And in the intervening years, he has had an ongoing relationship with key international institutions, serving in the position of director at the World Bank, at the Asian Development Bank, and at the Islamic Development Bank. And at home in Pakistan, Senator Dar's commitment to public service is expressed in his 20 years of service in the Pakistan Parliament, including 2 terms as a member of the National Assembly and 3 consecutive terms as a senator. And during that same period, he has served his country in a variety of senior government positions as Minister of State and Chief Executive of Pakistan, the Pakistan Investment Board, twice as Federal Minister of Finance, Economic Affairs, Revenue and Statistics, and since June of 2013 as Minister of Finance. He is also a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Constitutional Reforms. But last but not least, Senator Dar's contributions to social sector and the public sector are rooted in his humanitarianism and his philanthropic commitment, which is the driving force behind the 2 charitable organizations he heads and runs in the name of the Hajvari Trust and the Hajvari Foundation. From the perspective of this House, the U.S. Institute of Peace, what we regard as especially important is that he has been a very close friend and a strong supporter of our work in Pakistan. The advice and the guidance he has given to our team, Moeed, Andrew Wilder, and indeed to our board, our new chair, Steve Hadley, who visited in Pakistan not long ago, has been invaluable in helping us guide our work in this very important time in this most important country. And so it's with great pleasure that I welcome the Honorable Minister and invite him to address us on current situations in Pakistan. Mr. Minister.
Yes, sir. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Host, ambassadors, diplomats, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon and assalamu alaikum. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to be here. It's my second visit in the recent past. I accompanied Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in the last visit in October when he came to meet President Obama on an official visit here. And we had the pleasure of interacting at USIP when he was the Prime Minister of Pakistan, was the chief guest. I had opportunity to meet few of you at that event, and I was also asked to debrief at that event about some economic situation in Pakistan. So this is a great event for me that I'm here amongst same friends and the same USIP with Moeed Yusuf smiling as the host. Let me just remind you that I had those of you who were not present in the last event when Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif visited USIP. We had actually inherited an economy which was relatively weak. We had serious macroeconomic imbalances. Structural reforms were required. Stabilization measures need to be implemented. A fairly difficult task was ahead. But we contested our election 2013, which was the general election, based on a manifesto. That manifesto revolved around 4 E's: economy, energy, extremism, and education. So we contested election, and the public and the people of Pakistan had given a clear mandate, unlike 2008, where there was a split mandate to our PMLN government, the third time to run the federal government. We had the opportunity to run a province, which is the largest province. PMLN has been in governance almost 7 times, but the federal government third time. But the task was very onerous, and the challenges were huge. People expected that there would be serious trouble down the line. So even at the cost of little unpopularity in terms of political graph, we introduced, in accordance with our own manifesto, very painful reforms in the first few months, particularly within days through the budget, and then it came necessary for us to make sure that those reforms are implemented. Briefly, we had a roadmap, 3-year macroeconomic stability roadmap, because the tenure of the government in Pakistan is unlike US 5 years, but we didn't want to give a roadmap for 5 years. Obviously, people would like to see that almost halfway through what we have achieved. So the fundamental macroeconomic targets we fixed for us, the first one was to increase the GDP, which was around 3% average last 5 years of the previous government, to double it in 3 years to 6%. So increase every year by 1%. The first year 4+, the second year 5+, the third year 6+. To reduce the fiscal deficit, which we always call the mother of all evils, from 8.8 to 8 within a matter of a few weeks, to close the previous fiscal year of the previous government, because our fiscal year begins 1st of July, and we were elected on 11th of May, and we were sworn in on 5th of June, the Prime Minister, and 7th of June, the Cabinet. So we said we'll bring it down to 8, and then to around 6 this year, and next year 5, and third year 4, which is a very respectable, internationally acceptable, fiscal deficit for a country like Pakistan. The third target which we have fixed for us was to increase the investment to GDP ratio from 12.6% to 20% in 3 years. Fourth onerous goal is to increase the tax GDP ratio from 8.5% to 13%. in the same 3-year macroeconomic stability program. Fifth was to increase the forex reserves of the country from $8 billion to $20 billion in 3 years in order to cover more than 3 months import bill. And lastly, the public debt, which when we had the second time federal government, we left at 3 trillion rupees total debt, which increased in the next 8.5 years of a martial law driven government to almost double, over 6 trillion. And in the last 5 years, when the transition took place from a military, quasi-military rule to full democratic government, to 14.5 trillion. Now, this was certainly unsustainable. So we declared that in 3 years, we will bring it back to the statutory limit, which is 60% of the GDP. So these were the macro goals which we have been working around. There were some inactions, which are considered to be, for me, of criminal nature for any government, that for the sake of political expediency, you play with the economy. For example, the electricity tariff was not passed through for almost 15 months. It required, 6 cents adjustment from 9 cents to 15. And the regulator had given the awards, but not implemented, neither by the regular government nor by the caretaker government. The second one was there was a steep fall from the budgeted figure to the actual revenue collection last year, from 2,381 billion to 1,946 billion rupees. So they had revised it to 2,250, 2,150, 2,050, and this was very serious, and the caretaker government had committed here in this city with the twin buildings that they would go back and introduce 0.7% of GDP new tax measures, which were not implemented. The summaries were prepared, the entire due process was completed, caretaker Prime Minister had approved, but for political expediency, because elections were very near, not implemented. And I have already declared publicly, given a chance, that if we have 2/3 majority in the Senate, upper house, and the lower house, I would like to introduce a constitutional amendment that for all times to come, the government, no matter whose government and which political party, they should hand over a clean slate to the next government so that they can be made accountable that what has taken over, what has been taken over, and what they deliver to the next government. So this is a short history. The reforms have already shown, the very positive results. First of all, as I said, we presented the budget in a very record time. We've been in touch with, after we won the election, everybody knew who is going to be in the government. Party had clear mandate, majority. So between 11th of May till 7th of June, obviously we were informally interacting. Secretary of Finance, the Governor of Central Bank, the Chairman of the FPR. But obviously from 7th June, we had to work extra hard as a team to give the country budget on 12th of June, 2013. Because we have a process which need to be followed. I didn't know at that time that subsequently US is going to be having financial emergency. Had I known that, I probably would have been encouraged not to overwork and we have a constitutional provision also for 120 days. But we decided not to because it's new government and so we managed to give the budget on 12th of June, which was passed on 28th of June. We immediately re-engaged ourselves with IMF and all the reforms which one could have expected from the international donors to bring the country's economy back on track and to move towards the road of stability and balance macroeconomic position in the country. We had already introduced all those reforms through our own finance bill, which was presented on 12th of June, because our manifesto, which was, I happened to be co-author of that manifesto, on the basis of which our party had contested election, had a clear roadmap about the economic future, roadmap of Pakistan Muslim League N. So we actually followed that. So right now, in a matter of 8 months, results are already with us. Things have improved tremendously. Our revenue has gone up by around 17%. The taxes collection, which was last year 3% growth. Our foreign remittances have increased by 11% against a target of 6%. Our exports have grown by 6.2%. Our GDP growth is already showing 4% plus. And the fiscal deficit is actually below than what is targeted for the first 8 months of the current fiscal year. So this actually led us to re-engage ourselves with the multilateral donors who had shied away from Pakistan for the last few years because they probably lost faith. I can't say much, but there was no business. External flows had zeroed. And we obviously started off with World Bank. I'm sure many of you know that the IDA cycles are 3-year cycles. The countries obviously work hard to access their due share. It's very concessionary loan, 25 years with 5 years grace, with an average cost of less than 2%. It's virtually free money. But since Pakistan was not on the good economic health, so obviously the first 2 years of the 3-year cycle, which ends 30th of June 2014, had been lost by the time we were sworn in. So we had worked hard. Obviously, they waited to see what are the outcome of the reforms we were introduced. We got first the prior actions delivered. We got the first review done for 30th of September quarter. We got the second review done. And that generated the faith, and that generated the trust, and that generated, the confidence in these multilateral donors to re-engage with Pakistan. I'm happy to share with you that we, according to our calculation, we could access maximum under IDA 16, $1.7 billion US. Having seen our performance, we are already, in business with them. World Bank Operations Committee has already approved 2 program loans of $1 billion US. While the world would celebrate Labor Day on 1st May, the World Bank would celebrate Pakistan Day by having our program in their board on that day. So we would have the last week of May 2 project loans. One is Dasu, Hydel project. I'll come to energy in a minute. And the second one was the water irrigation system in the province of Sindh. They have been working hard and trying hard, but no success. So we got these 2 projects in principle agreed with the World Bank 600 plus 100 million. So that's how we would be able to access as a country to what I call due share of Pakistan as a member of these 2 institutions. This, has now led us, we have been absent from the international bond market for 7 years. So Pakistan decided that we should sound out, that we would wish to be back and be present in the international market. So me and my colleagues, we had been traveling last almost a week. One team towards west and other team towards east. One was headed by me, the other team towards east was headed by Finance Secretary. And we ended up our road shows last night in New York. West team been to Middle East, Europe, and US. The East team went towards Hong Kong, Singapore, LA, and Boston. We had indicated that we would go for index size, which is $500 million standard size of an issue. The response is amazing. We just, before I came here, we closed the, book building exercise. It's manifold. That shows that the confidence of the financial markets also, like the multilateral donors, has come back in Pakistan's economic future. They are satisfied with the performance. They're satisfied with the results so far achieved, and overall they're satisfied with the direction of Pakistan economy. Against our, the indication of, soliciting about $500 million bond, we had ended up with obviously with great acknowledgement for those who had actually made a historic interest, demonstrated historic interest in Pakistan sovereign paper. This is the largest, demonstration of interest in Pakistan paper ever in the past. As I said, it's more than tenfold. And we decided to, go for, instead of $500 million, $2 billion, close transactions for $2 billion, one for 5 year and one for 10 year. So this is, the confidence of the bond markets. As I said, the multilaterals, I explained the World Bank. Asian Development Bank is back on business. They have done already Jamshoro project. They are doing social safety net funding also. And they would also be joining in for the program loans, which is one for on the development sector, taxes, etc., the revenue, and the energy reforms. These are the two reform programs which World Bank, God willing, would give final approval on 1st of May in the board meeting. So we have been now proactive in coming back to the economic map of the world. The indications are very positive. I would start from where we are sitting now. It was one was happy to read in Wall Street Journal a few weeks back. Despite serious security concerns, Pakistan is likely to attract huge interest of foreign direct investment in Pakistan. Obviously, it is based on what we promised, what we have delivered so far, and our roadmap where we would like to take Pakistan, which I explained as 3-year macroeconomic stability program. Since IDA 16 would close on 30th of June 2014, we had now engaged ourselves with the World Bank Group for the next 5 years roadmap, 2015-19, the country strategic partnership program. Now, this program will revolve around 4 E's of our political party's manifesto, which I explained: economy, energy, education, and extremism. So we have, in principle, agreed for the next 5 years, the World Bank Group is likely to fund different projects revolving around these 4 areas to the tune of around $10.2 billion US. Our results, as I said, have been quite encouraging. We believe that we will remain, God willing, on track, and we would either perform or overperform. JETRO, I don't know how many of you have the chance to read their latest report. They have indicated Pakistan is likely to be the second choicest place for the foreign direct investment. If we continue to follow the reforms and take the country forward as per our economic plan unfolded, they believe that Pakistan is likely to be the second choicest place for the foreign direct investment. The Overseas Investor Chamber of Commerce, where Pakistan was rated -34, most of the multinationals of US-based companies are the members. So they have now rated Pakistan +2. In terms of latest survey of the World Bank, for business confidence, Pakistan has left India behind. We have 110, India is 134. So the last thing, good news for me is our old friend, Mr. O'Neill, the economist, has now come up with the term mint as opposed to previous term BRIC. Now the mint is Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey. The good news for me as Pakistani, that he rates now, it's a joint exercise, professional exercise undertaken by economist O'Neill and BBC. that Pakistan is likely to be, if we continue on the reform path we have adopted for Pakistan, Pakistan is likely to be moving from 44th world economy as of today to 18th world economy by 2050. As a citizen of Pakistan, I'm quite happy with 18th or better, but I'm certainly unhappy with the timeline he has given for us. We would like to halve it if possible, and I can assure you it's doable. Pakistan economy has a great resilience, has a great potential. We have so far been working mainly to fix and do the fighting and fix the macroeconomic imbalances which we inherited. I believe the future lies in the exploration and production of the natural resources Pakistan is blessed with. That area has been totally ignored in the last 2 decades. Internationally proven track record of reserves in Pakistan are quite high, both hydrocarbon as well as coal and other minerals. Obviously, there was not very good economic incentive for the exploration companies to come and explore. Despite the fact Pakistan has one of the best success rate in this field, up to 2012, last 2 years have been not very pleasant. Up to 2012, if you drill 5 wells, any drilling company, they will have at least 1 discovery out of 5 wells. This is one of the best, on the globe. So we have, the previous government had actually announced, but it remained fully implemented. They have revised the rate, valid price, and it has been revised almost doubled to $6-7. But as a student of economics, it's a very simple question. Should I be buying or importing gas for $16-17? Or should I be paying $6 to $7 to a foreign direct investor who comes in Pakistan, explores and produces and provides the same gas? I make huge savings. Same is the case of coal. We have almost 85% huge reservoirs of coal in Pakistan, Thar. India is sitting only on the tail of those reservoirs, and they have around 12 to 15%. They did mining on time. They have already, these electricity generation coal projects on the Mouth Mine. We are still in the process of now pushing the mining as well as the coal projects. Now this is what I could explain vis-a-vis economy, and I'll be happy to answer questions. On the second E, which is energy, obviously we again unfortunately had a shortfall of around 4,000 megawatt last year, which resulted in 12 to 16, 17 hours of load shedding. And one major reason that it could have been much better was the $5 billion equivalent of the dues payable to the generation companies, which included foreign investors, including from Europe and other countries. The average disbursement used to be 15-20 billion rupees against 500 billion rupees, or $150 million. So we announced in the budget last year that we will clear these dues within 60 days. And I'm happy to share with you that we cleared the entire backlog in 45 days. That added on to our generation capacity was 1,700 megawatt of electricity, reduced the load shedding to 3 to 4 hours. September, October, the domestic load shedding was 0. And the industrial production has gone up between the first 6 months of this year, 6.8% as compared to 2.9% same half year last fiscal year. So when I say that there is a great potential, I think certain things need to be fixed. Now, we have come up with a very detailed plan of enhancing our generation capacity within this tenure by not 4,000, the supply-demand gap of today, but around 9 to 10,000 megawatt, so that we can cater the additional demand, which would obviously be required for the enhanced GDP growth which we're aiming at. So there is a medium-term plan and there is a long-term plan. We are also embarking upon the energy projects like Dasu, which is about 7 to 8 years, the Amar Bhasha, which is 10 to 12 years, because both are 4,500 megawatt. But the Amar Bhasha is not only power generation, hydropower generation project, but it's also a dam, a water reservoir, which Pakistan needs very badly. We have also undertaken some cleanest technology-based coal generation projects, 6,600 megawatt in Balochistan, and around 4,000 megawatt in province of Punjab. The future infrastructure uplift program is again massive in our 4 years. It would be something like 30 odd billion US dollars equivalent, which would generate economic activity and hundreds of thousands of jobs. It will increase the per capita income. It will give a boost to the GDP growth. So, but most of those projects would be either on BOT basis or on public-private partnership basis or on IPP mod. We would give upfront tariff for almost all different fuel-based energy projects henceforth to be commissioned in Pakistan. We have already given bagasse, biomass, renewable energy, solar, wind. So that's the focus, even coal-based. So the idea is the energy mix, which has gone terribly towards the wrong tilt over the last 15, 20 years, from 75% non-furnace oil and 25% furnace oil, has now gone other way around in the last 2 decades. It is 75% furnace oil based and it is 25% non-furnace oil based. As a consequence of which, the price of electricity is much expensive than even United States of America and many of the European countries. It's about 15 cents on average. I'm sure most of you would know that the furnace oil-based energy would cost you something like 23 cents per kilowatt. So it's fairly expensive. So we are frustrating that energy mix by adding all the future generation projects, be it civil nuclear, be it solar, be it wind, be it coal-based. They would all frustrate and bring down the average over the next period of 4 years. So we don't have to increase, this energy prices in the long run, medium to long run. Inflation numbers are showing very smart. I keep repeating that the directions of upward growth on GDP and downward trend of inflation have converged between IMF and Pakistan government, which is a good sign. We always would differ on numbers, but because obviously they're very conservative, they wait for the numbers. They only are interested to announce the success, so they don't want to take any chances of, so they are always very conservative, so it's fine. But they now believe, and they have declared, not only them, but Asian Development Bank, that Pakistan growth is likely to be better than projected or anticipated by IMF or Asian Development Bank. They have even revised the number from 2.8 to 3.1. We still hold, we will be 4 plus, God willing, inshallah, because we have the first 6 months already 4 plus. On the inflation, we have been consistently saying that it will remain in single digit, and they have been talking of double digit. They had in fact projected around 12%, but after the second review, 31st of December, they have now again converged that it is going, if the inflation would be lower than initially projected by IMF, and they have now indicated a figure of 10%. I did make an offer to publicly when we held the joint press conference in Dubai that if my friend can reduce by just a fraction of a point of 1% and comes down to 9 point something, We can converge on figure also, but we are saying 8.5. So our figures are absolutely on track. Initially, as I said, the inactions of the past, two major actions, the tariff increase to industrial, to commercial, to bulk, all except the low-income domestic consumer, up to 200 units, which still cost Pakistan $2.5 billion per annum this particular year. But it is down from almost $6 billion subsidy to $2.5 billion this year. But that is budgeted, so we have no worry. We have already dished out almost $1.8 billion equivalent of subsidy. The rest is in 4 months. So you see that the numbers have been in the direction where we were looking for. So those two inactions on part of the tariff pass-through, as well as the introduction of new revenue measures of 0.7% of GDP, which the previous government had internationally committed to the multilateral lenders, but had not done it. We had actually implemented. The result was obvious that in the first few months, the inflation was to fuel. And it did. It did go to up to 10.9% around November, December, but it has come down to, again, what we anticipated, mainly because of the rupee appreciation of around 10% in Pakistan. We had, a very volatile handful of speculators were playing with the currency, and it's not the first time. I happen to be dealing with a crisis every time, there are some, and it is the second time, the people played with our currency in 98, 99 too, post sanctions, post-nuclear detonation sanctions imposed by the world. And again, this time, because of the speculation angle, the currency had actually gone to, I'm sure those of you from my co-nationals who have been remitting money from here must be very unhappy. They'll be losing 10% in terms of rupee value, but they should not bother much, because the gain to the exchequer is huge. It's almost $7 billion equivalent as of now. It's almost $7 billion rupees worth of loans have gone down in terms of actual numbers. So please bear with us. It's a small cost you would pay. The things are getting cheaper. The people you send the money to, 14 industries have, as a consequence of stable currency and an appreciated rupee, have voluntarily, after negotiations with the government of Pakistan, announced reduction of their products between 5 to 8% just around 2 weeks ago. The government has reduced already the petroleum prices, kerosene, petrol, diesel, high speed, light speed, high octane, almost on average 5% over the last few days from 1st of April, effective 1st of April. So it's going to bring the inflation down. So inflation would be, as I said, in the single-digit territory. The stock market has been doing wonderful, already declared one of the best performing emerging market in the region. So you see it has increased about 30% value. The index has increased by almost 33%. In terms of rupee capitalization, it has gone around 25%. In terms of dollar, it has gone 18%. So they're good numbers. So I now believe that the slogan we gave, we do not need aid, we would like to depend on investment and trade. I think we have moved towards that goal already practically, by performing the way the Pakistan economy has performed. So energy, I think I have covered. The education, we have a plan to double our national allocation for national allocation of education from 2% of GDP to 4% over a period of our current tenure. So we are giving all the importance which we should be given on investing on the human capital. We have almost more than half of the youth between 18 to 25. There's a huge capital we have in terms of human resource. Whereas we have in our budget for the current fiscal year applied all the possible austerity measures. 2 areas we have increased our allocations. One is development program, because country needs infrastructure, energy, communication, development projects in Pakistan. So increase almost by around 30%. On the social safety net side, we have increased our allocation by 87.5% for the current fiscal year. We would be serving 1 million more families through the cash income support. Last year, the total disbursement was 30 billion. This year, it is going to be 55 billion rupees. And the other programs for youth, for the small and medium enterprises, for the microfinance, for the skill training of the youth. Last year, we had around 10 billion rupees allocation. This year, we have made 20 billion. So as opposed to last year, 40 billion, we have an allocation of 75 billion. So the education and the social safety net expenditure will remain our focus. I think the number of people who have fallen below the poverty line. I've been voicing all these concerns as leader of the opposition, because as Honorable Ambassador introduced me, luckily I do not have a disconnect with the system over the last 25 years. I've been in some capacity been involved, either member of the opposition or leader of the opposition, or member of the Senate or member of the National Assembly, or in cabinet. So you see, this connectivity has actually given me a great edge to remain on track on the different national issues and on different national subjects. So I can assure you that we would be giving the due priority, and I've been saying that the vulnerables are getting worse, their positions and the incomes are falling, and etc. The numbers were increasing. Actually, it happened to be true, because 5 years ago, the definition of the dollar a day, and I've been saying it's not fair. The purchasing power of the dollar, even in United States of America, was not the same. So thanks God, the benchmarks have been revised. But I have been voicing as leader of the opposition. Mohit asked me that how long would I like to speak? Is it 30 minutes? Or I said anything between 30 minutes to 3 hours. I said my budget debate, when I open as leader of the opposition, I used to take around 2.5 to 3 hours. But I said I will not bore the audience. We have a huge, perhaps more interesting Q&A, because the ideas or any questions you have, I would like to answer. Lastly, the extremism or the security matter, the fourth E. Obviously, it is equal priority of our government to deal with the security situation in the country, to eradicate extremism, and, for the purpose of the regional peace. I think we have been pursuing proactively this goal, parallel and with equal priority as for economy or energy. It's a different matter that the results on economy are quicker than on the security issue, but things are improving. The government decided, the Prime Minister invited all the parties, whether they were present in the parliament or not present in the parliament, all political parties' leadership, soon after, within weeks. And these all parties conference, which took place in Islamabad, gave a mandate to the Prime Minister to try and resolve this issue through peaceful dialogue process. So we are giving the peace a last chance through dialogue. The other options will remain available to the government of Pakistan. I don't think we have too long time to wait. And another reason why we have to follow the dialogue process is our next door neighbor. It has a great impact, obviously, on our policies also. Afghanistan chose to engage Taliban and requested Pakistan that almost 4 dozen of key people who were in the custody of Pakistan, and the US and Pakistan were on one page. Afghanistan requested both countries that those should be freed so that they can facilitate the process of dialogue between High Peace Council of Afghanistan and Taliban. So that also has a bearing that for us to go solo on targeted operations or operations wouldn't have gelled well, because the enemy is common. Whether they are stationed across the border from our international borders or our side or their side, the issue is common. And I call them common enemy. So we have a priority to deal with the subject. Our government has a very, efficient and very robust recent national internal security plan, which was approved by the Parliament, by the Cabinet. We have made some different changes. We have introduced another ordinance, protection of Pakistan ordinance. So we are taking all the legal steps which are required in order to deal with this menace, because the human rights activists always they have their own view how to deal with this problem. There are always two schools of thoughts. But as I said, we have sequenced our actions in accordance with the All Parties Conference to go for what I call give a peace last chance through dialogue process. So that is on. So these are the 4 E's which I have explained to you that are core fundamentals of our manifesto, and our government believes to deal with every and each aspect of economy and other sectors in a most transparent manner, based on merit, good governance, and zero tolerance for corruption. So far, things are shaping up. As I said, the results are very encouraging, and we hope if the trend continues, we would be certainly positioned what Mr. O'Neill, much earlier than what Mr. O'Neill has predicted, 2050. Now, with these words, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions any of you would like to ask.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm fine.
Thank you, Minister Dar. Every time you speak, I have to actually look at the podium and see where your notes are. And either this is incredible, or you've got them all wrong. I'm sure it's the former.
Your both presumptions are wrong. They are credible as well as they are not wrong.
You speaking without the notes is incredible.
Okay.
That's what I meant. Let me open the floor. We have mics, so just wait for the mic to come to you, because this is also being sort of taped and recorded. Introduce yourself and then ask the question. Let me just throw out 2 myself, but you can take them in any order, and then we'll go
God
around.
help me. With fielding now. Please go ahead.
This is not a private conversation, so I'll be nice. I didn't hear you talk much about U.S. assistance specifically. There's the Kerry Lugar bill that went through. A lot of the analysts like me who sit here don't see that being renewed, or a new arrangement perhaps coming. Where does the Pakistan government see the U.S. assistance specifically fit into the mix that you've talked about? That's one. And the second, if I may, there was a bit of disappointment, at least I've had a lot of questions asked on the deal, quote-unquote, deal with India. And I remember last time you were here and you spoke in town, there was a fair bit of optimism around it. But it seems that there's been a bit of a delay in that. So some reflection on where we stand. Is that going to move forward, and why the rather surprising sort of delay? Would you like to take these, or should we take more questions?
You sure you want only 2 questions? Okay.
Yes.
He lost his chance to ask third. The first of all, the U.S. assistance. Well, we are extremely grateful. We have tremendous ties with U.S. The government and establishment, wonderful relations. Surely, as you know, that Kerry Lugar bill, I think, heavily under-dispersed. Please pardon me saying so. I think Robin is taking notes. But obviously, we are not pushing for undisbursed amount. So that's obviously our party policy is that we would like to have more access to the markets. We give enough incentives to attract the investment from friendly countries, and the US comes one of the top friends of Pakistan. We have a great volume, almost quarter of our trade, mutual two-way trade is with the United States. So the assistance as vis-a-vis coalition support fund is grossly and widely misunderstood. This is not assistance, but a reimbursement of the expenses which armed forces of Pakistan incur. We bill and we are reimbursed. So I think there should be a clarity in the minds of those who believe that CSF is an assistance. It is a reimbursement. Our friends are very cooperative. I'm sure it will be top of my agenda of the pending bills, but I can't tell you my agenda because Robin is going to leak it this evening. My bilateral economic dialogue, which is part of the strategic dialogue, begin tomorrow because they requested the US government to decouple the economic portion of the strategic dialogue. A few weeks ago, my colleagues, the advisor on foreign affairs and the defense minister came, but the economic portion of the strategic dialogue was pended till I arrive. I try to make this a 3-in-1 journey to save the country half the time and maybe one-third of the cost, because otherwise it would have been 35 days. I'm doing all that business in 15. So we have concluded the first event, which was roadshow and the bond marketing, which is over couple of hours ago. Now tomorrow we have this bilateral economic dialogue. So my friend, we will be discussing the 2014 and beyond. So I can give a hint to Robin what could be the subject matter discussion from my side. On the delay about the Indian, well, we are very much focused on the regional connectivity. And let me cite you a couple of things. Before our party took oath in June 2013, the famous project known as CASA, Central Asian South Asian 1000, the electricity connectivity between Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, and Pakistan could not see any light of the day despite great efforts by the State Department, great efforts by the World Bank, and great efforts by the other multilateral donors. So once we were sworn in, I put it on a fast track. We got in days the approval of the project. We got in days approval of the Economic Committee of the National Economic Council, ECNIC, and also we got them approval of the Cabinet to kick off the negotiations. The good thing is the project has already been approved in the last few days by the World Bank. We have certain issues on tariff, but I think I would not bore you with the details, but I'm sure in the forthcoming meeting of World Bank IMF in next few days, starting from Friday, I think we would be able to sort it out between the basic issue is the transit fee, which was projected in the feasibility of the World Bank around 0.6 cents, but they're now asking 2.75 cents. So obviously, I don't want to use strong word. One could call it daylight robbery, but certainly we are talking economics. So we will talk in economic sense, and we'll sort out in next few days. So we are very much there. We are all pro for this project, which has been, a great, great objective to connect the region in terms of the spare electricity Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan have in half of the year and supply to Pakistan and Afghanistan. On the Indian, the delay in Indian matter, we want the regional connectivity not now. But we are the political party who actually, triggered the process of dialogue in as early as 1999 with the BJP Prime Minister Vajpayee at that time, who first on his first ever state visit, or any Indian Prime Minister to Pakistan, who declared that we want to resolve what we have been saying. He said all issues, including the pending issue of Jammu and Kashmir, on the basis of mutual dialogue. So it was a great beginning, but unfortunately got derailed because of the subsequent coup, a military coup in Pakistan. So we have re-engaged, and then we also came up to push the concept of SAFTA. There is a regional cooperation of 7 countries, and we wanted to convert SAARC, a forum for this free trade in the region like European Union, SAFTA. But somehow, due to a hard stand and certain barriers by one of the major neighbors, this could not see light of the day. Again, we have now got engaged with India, on a very proactive manner in the last few months in order to expand the trade between the two countries, what we call non-discriminatory market access. It's a new term we have coined for mutual expansion of the trade. We wish to minimize the negative list by both countries. They have about 186 items which should be opened, and we have a similar large, long list. There was a committee, I can share it with you. There was a committee headed by me to review the future roadmap about the trade with India, the regional, for the purpose of regional connectivity. We have recommended to the cabinet and to the Prime Minister that this is to be proactively followed and closed. The dialogue was at a very advanced stage. But on reflection, we believed that it is not the time that we should conclude this deal with Congress, with the sitting government, because we might be seen that we are becoming a partisan to the Indian general elections. We were only a few days away. Even a tentative meeting of the cabinet was penciled in for this purpose. It needs cabinet approval. But I think the wisdom prevailed. No matter whom Indians would elect as their future federal government and which political party is none of our business, is the prerogative of the people of India. And whosoever they elect, we would, let me assure you, the spade work is there. Indian establishment knows the entire detail. So as soon as the new government in India is sworn in, we'll be happy to re-engage ourselves on this subject. I hope.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
More than necessary. We have Taha here.
Absolutely.
Taha Gaya with USAID. First of all, thank you for your comments, particularly on natural gas. Very, very happy to hear that. I have 2 questions. My first question has to do with state-owned enterprises. I didn't hear you touch on that. We're obviously watching that very closely. If you have an update and maybe a timeline for when privatization might happen. And my second question has to do with, given the success that you talked about in the bond markets, and given the recent grant by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, does that lessen the intensity with which Pakistan is participating in the IMF program, and does it intend to stick it out?
Well, interesting questions. The SOE's business first. The Cabinet Committee on Privatization has already approved 31 entities either to be partially or completely privatized. The fast track transactions are obviously capital market based, whereby we have certain shares to offload of OGDC, Oil and Gas Development Authority Corporation, PPL, Pakistan Petroleum Limited, financial institutions. These capital market related transactions would fetch us around $2 to $2.5 billion, depending on the market values. The process has already been triggered. The advertisements for the appointment of financial advisors to advise on the transactions are already out, and the response is in the due process. We have the intention, I can share it with you, to probably go for half of this on international market, where we are already listed, OGDCL and PPL and UBL type transactions. We probably would take it to the international market through GDRs or whatever good advice we get from the financial advisors dealing with the transactions. And the rest we would unload in our own stock market. So these transactions are well on track. They're about 7 out of 31. And as I said, the 31 include the privatization of the certain distribution companies, where we are having huge losses, line losses, etc. Also, a couple of generation companies of the electricity. Then we are looking for a strategic partner in the national airline with a clean balance sheet, what I call PIA new, so that the investor doesn't have to bother much about due diligence. We just put the planes, what we have, and the routes, and then we offer 26% strategic partnership. So transactions are on track, and hopefully would materialize. We are not leaving the restructuring process to wait till the transactions take place. There is a due process under our laws of the land, and it takes around anything between 12 to 18 months to complete a process of privatization or what I call strategic partnership transaction finalization. So you might have seen that we went for invited bids for wet lease first. We had 4 planes inducted. The pilgrims who went for Hajj didn't have any problem first time in many years. They had very peaceful service. Then we inducted and we advertised for another 10. We got 3 of our choice. On dry lease, we inducted. Then we had another tender of 10. We got 8, which are being delivered this month or next month. So you will have the chance to now switch over your airline. I'm also doing marketing for Pakistan, by the way. You'll be back on your national airline with the beautiful planes, latest model 2011, 2012, with leg space if you pay the right price, and good hostesses with new dresses. So
It's too much information, but okay.
So, as finance minister, I have to do this marketing business for my own airline. So what I was explaining is that while we are following the process, and again, this advertisement of appointment of financial advisor has been out, and it requires 4 weeks to have international participation. But we are not, sleeping over it. We are going ahead with the restructuring, so that obviously it will add value, and it reduces the losses, because we lose about $4 to $5 billion on these SOEs. So we are well on track. On the bond market, as you said, that we have good response. Once I felt like sweeping everything what was offered. But I thought that let the tranche be, we want to retain the presence of Pakistan in the international markets. I think the absence of 7 years is not too good, rather very bad, to use the right words. So we intend to remain in the international markets. Obviously, the foreign direct investor would like to see our presence. We are already in the equity market through our shares in OGDCL and other shares, and we would like to be in the bond market too. So bond market, yes, as I said, the response is tremendous, and must thank all those international large bond managers and funds and business houses who have actually shown great interest and confidence in Pakistan. Much beyond our expectation, to be honest, and much beyond the expectations of the issuing banks also. So you linked it with the Saudi assistance. And then you linked it with saying probably bye-bye to IMF. None is going to happen. Let me assure you that the reform agenda we have implemented, I keep repeating that it is, even if I did not need to have an access to the IMF, which actually was necessary because of the previous loans, I don't want to enter into blame game outside Pakistan, which was $8.5 billion. You know that is a standby program. The installments became due. This year, $3 billion alone was repayable. So we had to go to IMF. But even hypothetically, if the country's state of economy was what it was, which I as leader of the opposition knew and been yelling to just take corrective measures, and it was falling on deaf ears. So I would have done, we as a government would have done the same what we have done today. So the reform program is our own home-driven program. And it made life of IMF very easy. They were rather excited. I mean, I announced my budget on 12th of June, took oath 7th June, announced budget, and they came on 19th for a regular review. And they were excited to see that what probably, potentially or possibly they could advise or suggest to correct the economic imbalance, we have already done it and already announced that we are going to do in this roadmap. So the two things do not have linkage. The Saudi assistance is one-off. It's not Saudi, I'll call friendly country assistance. So it's one-off, and it isn't the first time. They had done it in the past, same countries in the past, 98, 99, deferred oil facility. So this is one-off. Many people ask me in these road shows, has this been an instrument to improve your rupee appreciation? My answer is no. We have a volume of something like $5 to $6 billion transaction per month. 40-odd billion dollars transactions of import, export, and other transactions per annum. So this is a gift, no matter how small it is, a grant or gift. It has to be acknowledged very graciously, and we do acknowledge graciously. But it isn't the factor which has actually led the rupee to appreciate. It was already adjusted by 9% by the time this inflow came end of February and beginning of March in two tranches of $750 million each. So, a lot of, I would say, irresponsible people try to give it a color of first some political reasons. And I, on floor of the House of the National Assembly, categorically denied there is no political strings or financial strings attached. Then some people try to give it a color of some sectarianism. I think they're all wrong. I think a grant or gift is a gift, whether it comes from US or from any other country. I think that must be acknowledged with thanks. And we do acknowledge, our government does acknowledge with thanks what it has been done. But surely it is not the only factor. It might have contributed a little more value addition to the appreciation process. But it cannot be the total wholesome reason for the appreciation rupee has demonstrated. So there is no connectivity. I hope, my friend, I have tried to clarify everything. Thank you.
Okay. At the back, and then we'll take one more because I know Minister Dar has to leave at 4:30. Please.
Thank you. My name is Tim Marlowe. I'm from Johns Hopkins University. And sir, I had two quick questions. I think the first one being, you talked about the 5-year initiative for the 4 E's, those lines of effort. Will those funds be allocated across the board evenly, or will there be specific emphasis on the economy per se or education? And then the second part of that question is focusing more so on the energy aspect. Through my research, I've learned that there's a big push for green energy in Pakistan, primarily solar energy. Will there be initiatives as part of this the 4E plan to kind of incentivize solar or other green energy infrastructure within the country? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. On the question of 5 years, I think you're talking about the World Bank Group, which I called the Country Strategic Partnership for Future Roadmap, and around indicative possibility of 10.2 billion. Surely it can't be equally allocated. It differs from project to project, program to program, and it would be actually, would be decided when the time comes. And but certainly the 4 areas it will be revolving around 4 E's, surely. But I'm 100% clear that it can't be what you said, that equally dispersed or equally distributed. That's not possible. So that's number one. So it would be as per the the requirement at the time of and the agreement between the government of Pakistan and the World Bank Group when it happens. On the question of incentivizing the green energy, yes, sure. We are, we have already given solar upfront tariff. The tariff of solars are coming down. We might have to review very soon. Those of you who wish to put up solar energy, please rush to the NEPRA, get an agreement before the the tariff is revised downward. So please come up. Yes, we are actually for all renewables. We wish this is the idea that if we come up with upfront tariff, the investor has and would save almost year and a half effort. Now, this was not business-friendly approach. It was a fraud approach. Why should I be running your financials? If you want to come and invest, let's say, in solar or wind, it's none of my business to run your financials to see whether you are making the right capital investment, or you are overvaluing the project or undervaluing the project. So, this has been the past history. Why? Because the government of Pakistan, and I call it a fraud policy of the last 15, 20 years, was guaranteeing the capital, was guaranteeing the return. And this is ridiculous. Your investment is guaranteed in Pakistan. None of the foreign investment has ever been subject to any loss in the sense by nationalization or reappropriation or anything in Pakistan. The laws are in place to protect the investment of the foreign investor. Never accept a very small interested member in the worst days of nationalization world over, when the rule of the game was socialism and communism in early 70s, late Zulkali Bhutto. Even he could not and did not nationalize the foreign interest in Pakistan, except a very small interest in the life assurance corporation in Pakistan. But all foreign investment has always been guaranteed, has always been taken care of. But if I need energy and I should run my own models, what is the fair price, like the whole world does, give you an upfront tariff, it should be your business to run your financial models to see whether it is $1 million per megawatt cost is fair, or 7,000 and somebody gifts you, like Saudi Arabia. So you bring a free project and plant in lab. So we have come up with upfront tariff. We will give the number of years. They will give you power purchase agreement, which is a sovereign paper, sovereign guarantee, and you can go to any institution, and this paper is obviously bankable, that you can raise the funds and funding for your project. Yeah. Last question or second
yes,
last?
I think let's take the one at the back
sure.
there, and then we can close.
Hi, my name is Amanda Mayoral. I work at the Institute of Peace here in the economics department. And the projections you have for Pakistan's growth is very inspiring.
Thank you.
And really excited to hear all the plans you have with the 18th position. That's
Thank you.
incredible. My question was, has the government, or even in your office, have you tied these growth rates to balanced growth? Have you, a middle class, is that a goal in mind when you talk about growth? What type of economically sustainable plans are you linking these projections to, so that you can maintain this in the future?
Thank you. Surely it will be all inclusive growth to begin with. Most of our the programs for youth, we have put in a clause that the preferred distribution is at least 50% of the female gender. We have around 52% population, and they are heavily underengaged in business. They have great potential. So we are trying to make sure that the growth is all inclusive across the board in all the real sector areas, which includes the agriculture, which includes industry and manufacturing, which includes the service sector. And the service sector, obviously, I have another marketing to do soon. The service sector includes the telecom industry. And Pakistan has been trying in the last few years to auction the spectrum license it has, 5 licenses, 3 3G and 2 4G. Those of you who work for corporate entities or telcos, please note down. We are going for auction on 23rd of April. The previous allocations in the budget of the last government twice was the first 500 million, then 750. The floor price, they couldn't do it. We have completed the exercise so far. We are on the very advanced stage. The international advisors were involved. The floor price is now, since you missed the opportunity, they couldn't do it, $1.3 billion for 5 licenses. There's a floor price. Anything you can give more in the auction would be welcome. So 23rd April we close. So it will roll out a number of opportunities, and mainly for females in this industry. And we would be coming up with the idea of rolling out this telecenters, around 500 across Pakistan. We would be coming up with technology parks. So in the telco industry, we would be having the latest technology, because the GDP growth we are aiming at, the job opportunities we intend to create, the industrialization which we have kept in mind, the the regional connectivity through, as I explained, different, the electricity or the trade with India, and now the economic corridor with the China we are working at, which would which would half the distance between Pakistan and China and to Middle East and to other countries. So we are working in all these programs, but all growth projects are inclusive of all inclusive. So we would make sure there is a balanced growth, and we have strong sectors, particularly agriculture. And now service sector has become very strong. Is the rough distribution between these three sectors is 57% service sector, almost 22% this agriculture, and 22% roughly is the manufacturing.
Thank you.
I have earned thanks? Or?
You earned your thanks just because you came here. I can share with the audience that I got a call at 6:30 a.m. in the morning on Saturday. With the gentleman on the other side saying, I'm coming from Bonn, going to New York, and I wouldn't have slept for I don't know how many days. Can we move the event? So I politely said we can't, and he's here and he's spoken to us. So I want to thank him. Before I do that, I want to follow your lead and do a bit of marketing myself.
Oh, thank you.
Please don't forget to look at some of our sort of research publications that are there if you're interested. Our next event is on the 23rd, on Pakistan, is on the 23rd of April, looking at Pakistan's counterterrorism challenge and talking about this book that we've just put out, and another one on insurgencies in South Asia, where the former ambassador to Pakistan, Ambassador Munter, former US Forces Commander General Allen, and Peter Lavoy will be speaking. May I present you this book?
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I thank you for your patience and for bearing me so long. Thanks very much indeed, and God bless.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. This is just finished it. And thanks all of you for joining us. Thank you very much.
Goal is to increase the tax GDP ratio from 8.5% to 13% in the same 3-year macroeconomic stability program. Fifth was to increase the forex reserves of the country from $8 billion to $20 billion in 3 years in order to cover more than 3 months import bill. And lastly, the public debt, which when we had the second time federal government, we left at 3 trillion rupees total debt, which increased in the next 8.5 years of a martial law driven government to almost double, over 6 trillion. And in the last 5 years, when the transition took place from a military, quasi-military rule to full democratic government, to 14.5 trillion. Now, this was certainly unsustainable. So we declared that in 3 years, we will bring it back to the statutory limit, which is 60% of the GDP. So these were the macro goals which we have been working around. There were some inactions which are considered to be, for me, of criminal nature for any government, that for the sake of political expediency, you play with the economy. For example, the electricity tariff was not passed through for almost 15 months. It required 6 cents adjustment from 9 cents to 15. And the regulator had given the awards, but not implemented neither by the regular government nor by the caretaker government. The second one was there was a steep fall from the budgeted figure to the actual revenue collection last year, from 2381 billion to 1946 billion rupees. So they had revised it to 2250, 2150, 2050, and this was very serious, and the caretaker government had committed here in this city with the twin buildings that they would go back and introduce 0.7% of GDP new tax measures, which were not implemented. The summaries were prepared by the government. The third time to run the federal government, we had the opportunity to run a province, which is the largest province. PMLN has been in governance almost 7 times, but the federal government third time. But the task was very, very onerous, and the challenges were huge. People expected that there would be serious trouble down the line. So even at the cost of little unpopularity in terms of political graph, we introduced, in accordance with our own manifesto, very painful reforms in the first few months, particularly within days through the budget. And then it came necessary for us to make sure that those reforms are implemented. Briefly, we had a roadmap, 3-year macroeconomic stability roadmap, because the tenure of the government in Pakistan is unlike US 5 years. But we didn't want to give a roadmap for 5 years. Obviously, people would like to see that almost halfway through what we have achieved. So the fundamental macroeconomic targets we fixed for us, the first one was to increase the GDP, which was around 3% average last 5 years of the previous government, to double it in 3 years to 6%. So increase every year by 1%. The first year 4+, the second year 5+, the third year 6+. To reduce the fiscal deficit, which we always call the mother of all evils, from 8.8 to 8 within a matter of a few weeks, to close the previous fiscal year of the previous government, because our fiscal year begins 1st of July, and we were elected on 11th of May, and we were sworn in on 5th of June, the Prime Minister, and 7th of June, the Cabinet. So we said we'll bring it down to 8, and then to around 6 this year, and next year 5, and third year 4, which is a very respectable, internationally acceptable, fiscal deficit for a country like Pakistan. The third target which we have fixed for us was to increase the investment to GDP ratio from 12.6% to 20% in 3 years. Fourth, onerous.
So with that, let me request Ambassador George Moose, who's the Vice Chair of the Board of Governors at USIP, former career Ambassador of the United States, and former Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, if he could please introduce our speaker. Thanks, George.
Well, thank you, Moeed. It's my distinct honor to introduce to you somebody who I'm sure needs no introduction in this audience. Senator Mohammed Dar, the Honorable Minister of Finance of the government of Pakistan. He, as you all know, is a leading international economic and financial expert. But more than that, he is recognized as a leader not only in his own country, but internationally. His experience and expertise in the world of finance and economics are matched by an abiding interest in, commitment to humanitarianism, democracy, and the rule of law. He is a distinguished graduate of 2 of Pakistan's most prestigious universities, Government College, which is now a Government College University, and the University of Punjab in Lahore. I believe most of you have had a chance to look at the minister's biography and resume, and I think we will all agree that it is indeed impressive. As I read through it, it seemed to me that there were 3 major themes or threads that run through it consistently. The first is his extensive experience and involvement in the private sector, which, as we all know, is the ultimate driver of economic growth and economic change and development. That experience actually began in the United Kingdom, but continued when he returned to Pakistan in the mid-1970s. And I think it's what informs much of his thinking as he is occupying this important, vitally important role as Minister of Finance. The second, the Honorable Minister, and invite him to address us on current situations in Pakistan. Mr. Minister.
Yes, sir.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Mr. Host, ambassadors, diplomats, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to be here. It's my second visit in the recent past. I accompanied Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in the last visit in October when he came to meet President Obama on an official visit here. And we had the pleasure of interacting at USIP when he was the Prime Minister of Pakistan, was the chief guest. I had opportunity to meet few of you at that event, and I was also asked to debrief at that event about some economic situation in Pakistan. So this is a great event for me that I'm here amongst same friends and the same USIP with Moeed Yusuf smiling as the host. Let me just remind you that I had those of you who were not present in the last event when Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif visited USIP. We had actually inherited an economy which was relatively weak. We had serious macroeconomic imbalances. Structural reforms were required. Stabilization measures need to be implemented. A fairly difficult task was ahead. But we contested our election 2013, which was the general election, based on a manifesto. That manifesto revolved around 4 E's: economy, energy, extremism, and education. So we contested election, and the public and the people of Pakistan had given a clear mandate, unlike 2008, where there was a split mandate to our PM.
One thread is that clearly of national and public service, something he has pursued both nationally and internationally. I noted that in 1976, for example, he accepted an offer from the government of Libya and joined as a senior auditor in the Auditor General Department in Tripoli. And in the intervening years, he has had an ongoing relationship with key international institutions, serving in the position of director at the World Bank, at the Asian Development Bank, and at the Islamic Development Bank. And at home in Pakistan, Senator Dar's commitment to public service is expressed in his 20 years of service in the Pakistan Parliament, including 2 terms as a member of the National Assembly and 3 consecutive terms as a senator. And during that same period, he has served his country in a variety of senior government positions as Minister of State and Chief Executive of Pakistan, the Pakistan Investment Board, twice as Federal Minister of Finance, Economic Affairs, Revenue and Statistics, and since June of 2013 as Minister of Finance. He is also a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Constitutional Reforms. But last but not least, Senator Dar's contributions to social sector and the public sector are rooted in his humanitarianism and his philanthropic commitment, which is the driving force behind the 2 charitable organizations he heads and runs in the name of the Hajvari Trust and the Hajvari Foundation. From the perspective of this House, the U.S. Institute of Peace, what we regard as especially important is that he has been a very close friend and a strong supporter of our work in Pakistan. And the advice and the guidance he has given to our team, Moeed, Andrew Wilder, and indeed to our board, our new chair, Steve Hadley, who visited in Pakistan not long ago, has been invaluable in helping us guide our work in this very important time in this most important country. And so it's with great pleasure that I welcome